Imagine a world where every object essential for survival, a container for water, a garment for warmth, a tool for hunting, had to be crafted by hand, its form limited by the materials nature provided in its raw state. This was the reality for early humans, a reality that began to transform in profound ways with the birth of three foundational technologies: pottery, weaving, and metallurgy. These were not mere hobbies or simple crafts. They were the world's first industries, the very engine that drove the transition from nomadic hunter-gatherer societies to settled, agricultural civilizations. The story of these technologies is the story of humanity learning to manipulate its environment in a sustained and systematic way, creating not just objects, but new possibilities for storage, trade, protection, and artistic expression. The control over fire, clay, fiber, and ore marked a departure from simply taking what the environment offered to actively reshaping it, setting the stage for all subsequent economic and social complexity. This journey of innovation began with the most humble of materials, earth and water, combined and transformed by the revolutionary power of controlled heat. The invention of pottery was so pivotal that archaeologists often use it to mark the boundary between the Neolithic New Stone Age and the Chalcolithic Copper Age, signifying its role as a cornerstone of sedentary life. Without the ability to store surpluses, the great leaps forward in agriculture and social organization would have been impossible, locking humanity into a perpetual cycle of foraging and seasonal migration. The discovery of pottery was arguably one of humanity's first forays into chemical engineering, a process of transforming a soft, malleable substance into something hard and permanent through a fundamental change in its molecular structure. It likely began by accident, perhaps when early humans noticed that clay-lined baskets or pits hardened when exposed to the heat of a fire. This observation, repeated and refined over generations, led to the deliberate firing of clay vessels. The earliest known ceramic objects are the Venus of Dolní Věstonice figurines from the Czech Republic, dating back to 29,000 to 25,000 BCE, which were ritualistically shattered after firing. However, the first functional pottery vessels emerged in East Asia around 20,000 years ago, with shards found in Xianrendong Cave in China representing the oldest known pots. These early innovations were slow to spread, as they were not yet tied to agriculture. The economic implications became immediate and staggering with the dawn of farming. For the first time, communities could reliably store surplus grain, seeds, water, and fermented beverages like beer, which was not only a nutritious drink, but also a safer alternative to contaminated water sources. This capacity for storage was a prerequisite for the agricultural revolution. You cannot settle down and farm if you have no way to preserve your harvest from one season to the next. Pottery also became one of the first durable mass-produced goods for trade. Archaeologists can trace ancient trade routes by the distribution of distinct pottery styles and materials, revealing complex economic networks that stretched for hundreds of miles. The distinctive funnel beaker culture pottery of Northern Europe, for example, or the painted wares of the Halaf culture in Mesopotamia, show clear patterns of cultural exchange and commerce. The invention of the slow-turning potter's wheel around 3000 BCE in Mesopotamia was a watershed moment, akin to the invention of the assembly line millennia later. It standardized production, increased speed exponentially, and allowed for thinner, more symmetrical, and stronger vessels. This technological leap did not happen in isolation. It was often coupled with another revolutionary invention, the kiln. Early pit firings were unreliable and could not reach high temperatures, resulting in brittle, low-fired pottery. The development of enclosed kilns, with separate fireboxes and stacking chambers, allowed for controlled oxidation and reduction atmospheres, leading to stronger ceramics and the ability to create consistent, vivid glazes. The Chinese, during the Shang dynasty c. 1600 to 1046 BCE, perfected high-temperature firing techniques that would eventually lead to the creation of porcelain, a technological secret they would guard for centuries. Furthermore, pottery provided a new, durable canvas for human expression and record-keeping. Before papyrus or parchment became widespread, clay tablets were the primary medium for writing. The economic records of the Sumerian city of Uruk, inscribed in cuneiform on clay tablets, detailed transactions, inventories, and contracts, giving us the first glimpses of organized state bureaucracy and a formalized economy. In the Americas, cultures like the Moche of Peru used pottery not for writing, but for hyper-realistic portraiture of their elites, creating a gallery of three-dimensional faces that have survived for over 1,000 years. Thus, a simple pot could be a storage jar, a trade commodity, a legal document, and a work of art, all at once. Simultaneously, in the realm of soft goods, another revolution was quietly unfolding: the art of weaving. Beginning with the simple twisting of plant fibers like flax, hemp, and nettle into string and cordage for fishing nets and snares, weaving evolved into a complex and economically critical technology. The earliest evidence of woven textiles dates back to the Neolithic era, with linen fragments found in ancient Turkey and Switzerland, and impressions of woven cloth found on clay fragments in Dolni Vestanis, dating to the same period as the ceramic figurines. The fundamental tools, the spindle whorl for spinning thread and the loom for weaving it into cloth, were invented and refined across the globe. The backstrap loom, where one end is tied to a tree and the other to the weaver's body, was portable and versatile, used from the Andes to Southeast Asia. The weighted vertical loom, developed in the Near East and Europe, allowed for the production of wider, heavier textiles. The economic impact of textile production cannot be overstated. It was a labor-intensive process, often falling to women, that transformed raw materials like flax, wool, and later cotton into valuable commodities. The entire process, from retting flax to separate the fibers, to spinning miles of thread, to setting up the warp on a loom, could consume hundreds of hours for a single garment. This investment of labor made textiles a form of stored wealth. Clothing provided not just protection from the elements, but also became a powerful marker of social status, wealth, and identity. Sumptuary laws in ancient Mesopotamia, and later in medieval Europe, legally dictated who could wear what types of fabric and colors, reinforcing social hierarchies. Control over the production of luxury textiles became a source of immense power and wealth for early states. The vibrant Tyrian purple dye, extracted from the murex snail in Phoenicia, required thousands of snails to produce a single gram of dye, making purple cloth worth more than its weight in gold, and a symbol of royalty for millennia. Similarly, the complex silk production process, sericulture, was developed in China around 3600 BCE and became the most guarded industrial secret in history, with China maintaining a lucrative monopoly on silk for over 3,000 years. The Silk Road, arguably the most famous trade route in history, was fundamentally driven by the demand for this single miraculous textile. In the Andes, the Inca civilization used a sophisticated decimal-based accounting system recorded on knotted strings called quipu, many of which were made from and recorded information about textile production, the most valued commodity in their economy. This industry demanded not just craft skill but also sophisticated systems of organization, from the shepherding of flocks to the management of large, state-owned dyeing workshops, making it one of the first truly integrated manufacturing sectors in the ancient world. While pottery and weaving transformed daily life, it was the mastery of metallurgy that truly reshaped the power structures and economic capabilities of ancient societies. The journey began with native metals like copper, gold, and meteoritic iron, which could be cold-hammered into decorative beads, small tools, and ritual objects. The Iceman Otzi, who died in the Alps around 30,300 BCE, carried a copper-bladed axe, a valuable possession that signified his high status. But the true revolution began with the smelting of ores around 5000 BCE in the Balkans, a process that required reaching and maintaining extremely high temperatures in a controlled furnace. This was the birth of extractive metallurgy, a quantum leap in human technological prowess. It required not just heat, but an understanding of chemistry, creating a reducing atmosphere, lacking oxygen inside the furnace to strip the oxygen atoms from the metal ore, leaving behind pure metal. This process was likely discovered in multiple locations independently, from the Balkans to the Serbian site of Rudna Glava, to the Timna Valley in Israel. The Copper Age soon gave way to the Bronze Age around 30,300 BCE, with the discovery that alloying copper with about 10% tin produced a metal far superior in hardness, durability, and castability. This discovery triggered the world's first arms race and the establishment of vast international trade networks. Tin is a relatively rare metal, and sources in places like Cornwall in England, Anatolia in Turkey, and Afghanistan became nodes in a globalized Bronze Age economy. The Uluburun shipwreck off the coast of Turkey, dating to the late 14th century BCE, provides a stunning snapshot of this international trade. The ship carried 10 tons of copper ingots from Cyprus, a ton of tin ingots, along with Canaanite jars, Mycenaean pottery, Egyptian ebony and ivory, and Baltic amber. Its cargo was a microcosm of the Eastern Mediterranean economy, showing how interdependent civilizations had become for critical raw materials. The economic power of metal was twofold. Firstly, it created superior tools for agriculture. Metal-tipped plows could break tougher soils, expanding arable land and warfare. Bronze swords, spearheads, and chariot fittings granted decisive advantages to those who controlled its production. Secondly, it created a new class of highly specialized full-time artisans, the smiths, who possessed secret, almost magical knowledge, making them invaluable to kings and chieftains. Their workshops were often located within palace or temple complexes, as seen in the Minoan Palace of Melia or the Egyptian Temple of Ptah at Memphis, underscoring their central role in the state apparatus. Control over metal sources and workshops became a primary objective of early states, fueling military expansion and the consolidation of political power. The quest for tin and copper was as powerful a driver of exploration and conflict in the Bronze Age as the quest for oil is in the modern era. The culmination of these early technological revolutions, pottery, weaving, and metallurgy, forged the very foundations of the ancient economy. They moved society beyond mere subsistence into the realms of surplus, specialization, and complex trade. A potter could trade his wares for grain from a farmer, who relied on a metal plow made by a smith, who in turn needed cloth from a weaver for his family. This interdependence created a non-agrarian economic sphere, fostering the growth of villages into towns and eventually cities like Uruk, Mohenjo-Daro, and Anyang. These crafts required dedicated spaces, workshops, and the stockpiling of raw materials, creating the first capital assets. They also necessitated the development of new social structures to manage production, distribution, and the accumulation of wealth. The skills and knowledge associated with these crafts were not easily acquired. They were often guarded secrets passed down within families or guilds, creating lineages of artisans and establishing the principle of specialized labor that remains a cornerstone of our modern economy. The legacy of these first technologies is all around us, in the ceramics that hold our food, the textiles that clothe us, and the metal that frames our buildings and powers our devices. They were the initial, crucial steps on the long path of economic development, proving that the human capacity to innovate with the materials at hand is the ultimate driver of civilizational progress. They transformed humanity from a species at the mercy of nature to one actively building its own world, one pot, one thread, and one ingot at a time. Thank you for watching this in-depth lecture. If you enjoyed this exploration of how pottery, weaving, and metallurgy built the foundations of our world, please support our channel by subscribing and leaving a like. It helps us continue creating this detailed historical content. In our next session, we will delve into the fascinating consequences of this new economic complexity, the dawn of trade, barter, and the first money, shells, livestock, grain. We will explore how the surplus goods created by these very crafts led to the invention of commerce and the earliest forms of currency.